29, women's studies degree from Berkeley, working as a program coordinator for a non-profit focused on gender equality in Boston. I tell people I'm basically fighting to dismantle outdated patriarchal expectations that trap women in unpaid caregiving roles, breaking cycles of female exploitation. One advocacy campaign at a time. Morning ritual always the same. Grab my fair trade coffee in a mug that reads "Smash gender roles" before checking emails from other women's rights organizations. Roll my eyes at whatever traditional family obligations my older relatives keep trying to guilt me about through passive-aggressive text messages. Coffee in hand, logo facing out so everyone at the community center sees I'm the type who puts principles before family pressure. Program director from Outreach sees it, nods approvingly, says, "Love the message." I grin, sip like it's proof I'm living authentically. Launch into my morning philosophy, loud enough for volunteers to hear. Women have spent centuries sacrificing careers for family duty. If we want equality, we have to refuse to be unpaid caregivers. Behind us, the bulletin board displays flyers about women's economic empowerment and breaking free from traditional gender expectations. The biggest headline reads, "Your career matters more than their comfort," in bold purple font. I gesture at it with my mug, straighten my shoulders. See, when women prioritize themselves, everyone benefits in the long run. Program director laughs, says, "Exactly, like I just solved gender inequality before 9 a.m. I smile wider. Feels like validation before the day officially starts. My dad lives alone in the same house where I grew up in suburban Worcester. 74 years old, retired machinist who worked 40 years at the same factory. Stubborn man, old school mentality, refuses help even though his arthritis makes basic tasks difficult. Lives in that 3-bedroom house with photos of mom everywhere, 8 years after her funeral. Never remarried, barely dates. Just maintains the garden she loved and watches the same TV shows they used to share. He's the type who still makes her favorite meals on Sundays even though he eats alone. Calls me twice a week asking when I'm visiting. Like proximity equals affection. In my head, he represents everything I'm fighting against. Traditional masculine provider mentality expects daughters to drop everything for aging parents. Probably thinks women should sacrifice careers for family obligations. I love him, but I rarely visit. He's exhausting emotional labor disguised as family duty. Later that month, I host our quarterly feminist book club meeting. Invited colleagues and local activists too. Living room packed with wine glasses and copies of books about women refusing traditional roles. Conversation flows the way it always does when we gather. Patriarchal family structures, emotional labor expectations, women breaking free from unpaid caregiving. Friend from the domestic violence shelter brags about how she convinced another woman to prioritize her own needs over her demanding mother-in-law. I jump in louder than necessary. Exactly. Previous generations guilt-trip us into recreating their mistakes. We have to model healthier boundaries. Everyone nods enthusiastically. One activist says, "Women who sacrifice everything for aging parents just perpetuate the cycle of female exploitation." Then my aunt, visiting from Providence, finally speaks up. She's not academic, not feminist, just a retired nurse who usually listens quietly during these discussions. Sets down her wine glass, says carefully, "Sometimes caring for family isn't exploitation. Sometimes it's just love." The room goes quiet, books closed mid-discussion. I laugh sharp, wave her off. That's exactly the kind of guilt-based thinking that keeps women trapped. She doesn't back down, leans forward slightly, says clearly, "Your father asks about you constantly. Worries when you don't call. That's not patriarchy, that's loneliness." The air grows heavy. My friends shift uncomfortably in their chairs, trade glances across feminist literature. I roll my eyes, force a dismissive laugh. He needs to develop independence instead of emotional dependence on his children. One member backs me up. Says healthy adults don't make their happiness other people's responsibility. Conversation bounces back quickly to safer theoretical territory, but my aunt just goes quiet, checking her phone like she's done with all of us. I don't give it another thought. These meetings are about progress, not guilt. 3 weeks later, my phone rings at work while I'm reviewing grant applications. Unknown number, but I answer anyway. "Miss Rodriguez? This is St. Mary's Hospital. Your father was brought in this morning after a fall. He's stable, but we need family here for discharge planning." My stomach drops. Fall? I hadn't talked to him in 2 weeks, maybe 3. Is he okay? Nurse explains he fell in the garden, lay there for hours before a neighbor found him. Mild concussion, bruised ribs, but the real concern is that he can't live alone safely anymore. I drive to Worcester in rush hour traffic, mind racing. The hospital smells like disinfectant and fear. Find him in room 237, looking smaller than I remember. Hospital gown making him seem fragile instead of stubborn. His eyes light up when I walk in, like my presence is the best medicine. Mija, he says softly, trying to sit up straighter. You came. The relief in his voice makes my chest tight. How long has it been since I visited? Since I called just to check in instead of returning his calls out of obligation? Discharge planner pulls me aside, explains his options. Home with full-time care, assisted living, or family support. The costs are staggering. His house could be sold to fund care, but that would take months. Do you have family who could help during transition? I think about my apartment in Boston, my career, my advocacy work. Think about everything I've said about women refusing to sacrifice their futures for family obligations. What about nursing homes? I ask. She hands me brochures for facilities in Worcester. There's Sunset Manor about 15 minutes from his house. Good reputation. Accepts his insurance. I flip through glossy photos of smiling elderly people in clean rooms, activities coordinators leading craft sessions. When I mention it to Dad, his face falls. A home, but I'm not that bad yet, am I? His voice is small, confused, like he can't understand how we got from garden fall to institutional care so quickly. It's temporary, I lie, though we both know it isn't. Just until you're stronger. But looking at the brochures, reading about memory care and end-of-life services, temporary feels like denial. 2 weeks later, I help him pack. 40 years in this house reduced to 1 suitcase and a few photo albums. He keeps picking up items. Mum's coffee mug, their wedding album, his toolbox, then putting them back down when I remind him about space limitations. What about Mum's garden? He asks, staring out the kitchen window at roses she planted 20 years ago. Who's going to take care of it? I don't have an answer. The house will be sold eventually, garden paved over for new owners with different priorities. Sunset Manor is exactly like the brochures. Clean, efficient, professionally cheerful. Staff members smile bright, call him Mr. Rodriguez with practiced warmth. His room has a bed, dresser, small TV, and window overlooking the parking lot instead of Mum's roses. During intake, they ask about family involvement. His daughter will visit regularly, the social worker notes, pen poised over paperwork. I nod, though regular feels optimistic given my schedule. We encourage family participation in care planning, makes transition easier for everyone. First month, I visit twice. He's always dressed, sitting by the window, face lighting up when I appear, shows me crafts from activities, tells me about his roommate who fought in Korea, asks about my work like my advocacy matters more than his adjustment to institutional life. Food's not bad, he says, though I notice he's lost weight. Staff's nice, though they're so busy. Sometimes I wait an hour for help getting to the bathroom. He says it matter-of-factly, not complaining, just sharing his new reality. Second month I visit once. He's still by the window, but the excitement seems forced. Roommate died last week, he mentions casually. Heart attack in his sleep. They moved in someone new, but he mostly just watches TV with the volume too loud. I stay 30 minutes, promise to come back soon. In the parking lot, I tell myself this is better than watching him decline at home alone. Professional care, social interaction, safety, everything the brochures promised. Third month, I don't visit at all. Work gets busy, advocacy projects demand attention, and nursing home visits feel heavy, depressing. He calls twice, but I'm in meetings. Text him instead. Sorry, crazy week. Will visit soon. Fourth month, my aunt calls. When's the last time you saw your father? Her voice is sharp, accusatory. I visited yesterday. He's lost 30 pounds. Keeps asking if you're okay. Worried something happened to you. Guilt hits like a physical weight. I've been busy with work, important projects. Even as I say it, the words sound hollow. He's getting professional care. That's what matters. Professional care isn't family, Elena. He's dying of loneliness in there. Her words sting because they might be true. The staff says he talks about you constantly, shows everyone your picture, brags about your education. That weekend, I finally visit, 6 weeks since last time. He's noticeably thinner, eyes dimmer, but still sits by the window like he's been waiting. Mija! Same enthusiasm, but weaker now, like hope is becoming harder to sustain. Sorry I haven't been around. Work's been crazy. He nods understanding, doesn't mention the missed calls, the unanswered texts. Just grateful for whatever time I can spare. I've been thinking, he says carefully, about when your mother got sick. You were in college, remember? I took leave from the factory. Brought her home for the last months. People said I should put her in a facility, get professional help. I remember. Junior year. Him calling with updates about chemo treatments. Her refusing to let me drop out to help. She wanted to die in our bed, looking at her garden. Said institutions were for people who didn't have family who loved them. His words hang heavy between us. I'd forgotten that story. Forgotten how he sacrificed income and sleep to honor her wishes. How he'd called it love, not obligation. I'm not asking you to take me home, he continues quietly. I know you have important work, important life. Just wondering if this is how it has to end. If professional care is better than family care, even when family care is possible. I want to defend my choices, explain about women's liberation and refusing traditional gender roles. But sitting in his sterile room, looking at his hopeful face, the arguments feel theoretical while his loneliness feels real. 2 months later, my phone rings at midnight. Sunset Manor, night supervisor, professional sympathy. Mr. Rodriguez passed peacefully in his sleep. Heart failure. Family should come in the morning for arrangements. I drive to Worcester in darkness, mind numb. At the facility, they hand me his belongings. One suitcase, photo albums, and a letter addressed to me in his careful handwriting. For Eleanor, from your father who loved you. Inside, his final words. Sold the house last month. Lawyer has instructions. Gave everything to St. Vincent's charity. You were right about women not being obligated to sacrifice for family, since you couldn't sacrifice for me. Figured you wouldn't want anything that might feel like obligation either. I'll love you always, even when you couldn't love me back the same way. Dad. I sit in Sunset Manor's parking lot at dawn, reading his letter again and again. He'd interpreted my feminist principles literally, assumed my absence meant I didn't want the burden of inheritance either. The house, his savings, 40 years of work. All donated because he thought that's what my independence required. My phone buzzes with condolence texts from family, friends asking about funeral arrangements. But all I can think about is Mum's garden, now destroyed, and Dad's last month spent waiting by a window for visits that came less and less frequently. I'd wanted to break cycles of female exploitation, but somehow I'd broken something else instead. The connection between caring and love, between duty and devotion. I'd been so focused on refusing to be trapped by traditional expectations that I'd trapped him in professional loneliness instead. The feminist theory was sound. Women shouldn't sacrifice everything for family obligations. But theory and practice are different when the family member is real, aging, and calling your name. Some obligations aren't exploitation. Some sacrifices aren't oppression. Some choices made in the name of liberation just leave everyone more alone. Standing in that parking lot, holding his final letter, I finally understood what my aunt meant about love versus exploitation. Dad hadn't wanted to control my life. He'd wanted to share his remaining time with someone who mattered to him. And I'd given him professional care instead of presence, theory instead of tenderness, principles instead of the one thing he'd actually needed, his daughter, choosing to show up. The inheritance was gone, but the real loss was bigger than money. It was time I could never get back. Conversations we'd never have. Love I'd been too righteous to offer when it could still matter. Some prices are too high to pay, even for liberation, even when you're absolutely certain you're right.